going. What?
There you are.
Look out, Bert! Yeah, punch boy! Look out!
I started producing this film about 3 years ago with the intention of making a kind of King Kong movie set in Edinburgh. And I decided to use the Loch Ness Monster as a kind of vehicle for giving the story some impact, and because of the fact that the Loch Ness Monster is pretty well known. And I also wanted to perhaps give the audiences some kind of idea of what it would be like if the Loch Ness Monster was actually discovered and possibly captured. I think the one thing that Hollywood did produce was entertainment. Their prime motive was entertaining people. They didn't have any higher aims than that. And I like to think in the films that I'm producing, even if they are documentaries or semi-documentaries, that they have an entertainment value. And it's much more difficult if you're doing a film which has some large-scale action. It's much more difficult recreating the action on the screen than it is to produce some photograph of the action. But I think that the viewer likes to be transported into this kind of fantasy world, and I just like to make the kind of films that they want this to happen.
Do you always take the pictures yourself?
Ever since the trip I made to Africa, I done got a swell picture of a charging rhino, but the cameraman got scared. That darn fool, I was right there with a rifle.
Think he's crazy, Skipper?
Just enthusiastic. Camera.
If you make any kind of monster movie nowadays, you're obviously going to find yourself back in the King Kong genre, because it's almost impossible to do something which has not been done in this film. Nearly all of the films which have been made since have certainly emulated this great film. I was one of the people amongst millions of others who just staggered out of the cinema after seeing it for the first time and felt that this was something that would never be forgotten. If you stop someone in the street, no matter if they're 5 or 105, and ask them who King Kong is, they'll tell you who he is and what he was. At the time they made King Kong, they were actually breaking very new ground, because a lot of the effects done in King Kong had never been done before. And the special effects people were working very much in an experimental field. And it's to their credit that they managed to produce such a stunning effect. The animator who animated the film, Willis O'Brien, was in fact an ex-boxer, and I think that he used a lot of this knowledge he had to inject the humanoid feeling into King Kong. O'Brien himself was a bit of an adventurer, and he had done a lot of things, including boxing and wrestling. But he was the only one in Hollywood at the time who could undertake this task. One has to consider that an animated film, since film runs through the projector at 24 pictures per second, in other words, you have to move the monster 24 times per second to get that kind of movement. And if you consider how long King Kong is and the amount of footage that he employs, this is a considerable amount of time. Well, one of the peculiar things about the animated film is that when you get an animated gorilla, say, which is moved frame by frame, it has a peculiar effect called strobing on the screen. Whereas if you get a man dressed up in a monkey suit, it doesn't look quite the same for some reason or other. The kind of effect that you get from animation is a kind of surrealistic effect that people accept and wonder if it's not there. It's incidentally one of these things that's very difficult to get rid of when you are actually animating. It's It's obvious when you look at a film like King Kong that a great deal of time and effort has gone into the work of the art director in choosing the kind of moody landscapes that form King Kong's domain. And a great deal of this was based on the work of the famous 18th century painter Gustave Doré. I think it's fair to say that the producers, as far as King Kong was concerned, they were trying to cover all their bets by making sure that King Kong had every entertainment ingredient that would draw audiences, and violence was certainly one of them. It's interesting to see that King Kong was made before the code, which came in 1935, governing violence and sex on the screen. Some of the scenes filmed for King Kong were so horrific that they were cut from various versions of the film. In fact, I'm not sure if there is a complete version of the film in existence. One of the most horrific scenes was the seamen who were shaken from the tree trunk by King Kong fall into a ravine which is full of ravenous spiders. And these scenes were just considered to be a bit too horrendous for audiences to swallow. We were faced with a kind of problem that the public's attitudes to certain things in movies have changed a great deal. For example, the crowd scenes in King Kong, where you have literally thousands of people running about New York shrieking and screaming. I doubt very much whether this would happen today, because I think people are much more sophisticated, they're much more aware of the auxiliaries and the authorities having things under control, and it's very doubtful if they would be reacting the same way. So we had to consider this during the making of the film.
Here come the planes! Let them get in!
I'm one of these dyed-in-the-wool Hollywood people who like to think that I'm not particularly interested in originating material from the point of view that it has to be original, because I think there is nothing wrong with emulating the kind of product that was made over the years and using the same kind of sets and the same kind of attitudes and the same kind of entertainment value that was in these films. Now, that doesn't mean to say it's very easy to recreate this kind of thing. I think it's true to say that people are watching more movies than ever. They may be watching on their television set, but it's curious to see, although everyone says that video is killing the cinema, any video shop would never survive without cinema films. So you have this curious relationship between the two, that one cannot survive without the other. And there is a great deal of attraction in the word film as opposed to video. People will watch something if it's been produced on film. The cinema will probably keep declining, but I don't really think that it will completely go, simply because there are a tremendous amount of people still interested in the cinema. There are a tremendous amount of young people who are brought up in the video world, where cinema is a novelty to them. So I always think that there will be a place for the cinema, and also in the case of large-scale productions, it would be difficult to think of any other way that these films could be seen apart from the cinema screen.
No, yeah.
Loch Ness, the most famous stretch of water on the surface of the earth. In world terms, of course, by comparison with some of the giant lakes, this is a mere puddle. And even in the Scottish context, Loch Lomond is bigger in surface area, Loch Morar deeper. But in terms of column inches of sometimes sensational prose and even occasionally verse, these 26 square miles of often sullen water have garnered more publicity than all the rest of the lakes of the world put together.
But I thought before you unraveled into complete disorder that maybe we should straighten out the entire subject. Recently, I've made a few management changes so that we'll have a streamlined team in place through which we can reach decisions promptly and get results in the Geneva talks. Keeping in mind our commitment to the security of Europe and to peace, and in order to ensure the closest possible coordination with our European allies on arms reductions and deterrence.
For $188.
And that includes the eye exam.
Follow-up visits.
Plus Sterling's 60-day complete money-back guarantee.
Here in New York, clouds mixed with sunshine today and a high temperature near 70 degrees. Variable cloudiness tonight down into the mid-50s. Hazy sunshine tomorrow, and tomorrow a bit warmer.
This is Eyewitness News, the AM report.
Thank you, Bob. Good morning, everyone. Last night at the United Nations, the American Secretary of Defense announced a backup for the NATO alliance early warning systems in Europe, including a deal with London for the United States to purchase outright a section of the Scottish Highlands. Here's a report from Jim Bickerfield.
Angry exchanges in the British Parliament greeted the announcement. The area purchased by the United States is steeped in Scottish history and has long been popular with tourists. Fears that it could become a dumping ground for defense bases was strongly denied by U.S. officials who insisted that the environment of this area would be preserved.
Médias du monde entier. Le monstre du Loch Ness a été trouvé sur une plage après un orage électrique. Aucune photo ne sont encore disponibles, mais la presse affirme que la créature fait 16 mètres de long et qu'elle est d'origine préhistorique, plésiosaure. Des milliers de personnes viennent visiter l'Écosse. L'aéroport d'Orly a vendu tous ses billets très rapidement et Londres procure des vols supplémentaires pour satisfaire la demande.
Flights to Glasgow, Edinburgh and Aberdeen are now fully booked.
That the creature is almost 50 feet long, is prehistoric of the plesiosaur family, and is in all probability quite dangerous.
I suppose it has occurred to the Prime Minister and other members of this House that ownership of the monster will generate a great deal of money. Let this creature stay in its homeland and keep at least some wealth in Scottish waters before our American friends can solve the impossible task of
Meanwhile, the U.S. Navy has loaned Great Britain their scientific 50-ton megatruck to transport the monster. Over at the UN, a stormy debate is brewing up over who the monster actually belongs to. The United States delegate to the UN claims that Great Britain has insufficient marine facilities to allow millions of people to see this ninth wonder of the world. Third world countries have reacted angrily to the U.S. position, claiming that the creature should be taken back to where it came from, a view supported by the Soviet Union. Meanwhile, pressure from minority groups is starting a major political row which threatens to drive a wedge into the special relationship between Britain and the United States.
Hear the views of any delegate who wishes to speak, but we must have order in the Assembly. The Secretary General requests the United States to make their statement.
The President has sympathy and due regard for the emotional background surrounding this issue in the United Kingdom. However, we will not be intimidated by factions outside or within this assembly who are trying to deflect the United States from its objectives. According to the terms of our defense treaties with Great Britain, we claim legal ownership, and we further maintain that only the United States has the facilities to transport and exhibit the monster in natural surroundings at Marine Fantasyland, Florida. We urge Great Britain to present us with a favorable, positive reply. Delaying tactics will not deter us from our objectives.
On behalf of Her Majesty's government, the Prime Minister has asked me to reply with this message. The United Kingdom concedes that the creature known as the Loch Ness Monster will from this moment be under the ownership of the United States of America.
And our contestants will receive Westminster Crazy Automatic Corn Popper. Stirs itself to give a big fluffy green tasty popcorn, 6 quarts in 6 minutes. Easy to use 12-inch pre-pasted wall covering squares, dip in water, slip into place, tough washable flare squares, and 24 colorful patterns. And here again, the star of our show.
Mr. Speaker, at this very moment, thousands of folk are lining the streets of Edinburgh, waiting to see an American truck carrying Scotland's own monster away to appear in some Miami watershed. Can we have the Prime Minister's assurance that any other creatures discovered in Loch Ness will be the property of our country? And to hell with any defense treaties.
can see the second part of The Monster and the Cave Girl after this part of the political broadcast on behalf of the White Party.
Always at the best bits. Somebody says I've seen it. It doesn't focus on it. Don't get all drunk there on the side. You right, John?
They put the funnies in another page.
We're not interested in how it got there. That's not what's bothering us. You only have to stop the man in the street to see how ordinary Americans, all of us, are concerned on this issue. If there is any British military or other effort to neutralize the monster, the United States will place under serious review all defense treaties with Great Britain and the Western Alliance.
We're about to get extra power.
all of America views with deep regret the unfortunate outcome of the dispute between our two countries and hopes that the cordial relations which existed between Great Britain and the United States can be restored.